Hello everyone, welcome to this conversation that we call the DualLens. So DualLens, as the name indicates, is a conversation with two leaders on a common topic or an area, bringing in their own expertise from their own practical experiences, their insights which they have learned throughout their career, and what has brought them to this particular stage of life and career. What we are looking to achieve from this is not a lot of theory, not a lot of frameworks, but something practical which aspiring professionals can use in their own life. And the whole idea of this conversation is not to make it one-way street. We are looking at something which you can learn from all of us here. And this being the first episode, it's my pleasure to invite two professionals I have great respect for. Jaikrishna, or JK as he's fondly known as, is a passionate HR leader. He's an organizational culture champion and also an ICIF credentialed ACC coach. And he's also a certified business, family business advisor. That's something I would want to know more, JK, at a different time probably. So currently, JK serves as a group CHRO and a family advisor at the Amara group, and is also a director on the board of Rajanna Foundation, which is the group CSR. So welcome, JK.
Thank you. Thank you, Mani. Thanks so much.
And I also have the pleasure of having Swaraj here. Swaraj Mishra is a global HR leader with over 26 years of industry experience, all in HR. Currently, he heads his strategic people initiatives and analytics for Pegasystems globally. His role also includes AI application in HR, and he also is a certified PCC coach from ICF and also a Six Sigma Black Belt certified. So welcome, Swaraj. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Mani, and it's my pleasure to be here with both of you.
Absolutely. Pleasure is all ours mutually. I'm sure we are, we have interacted so much earlier in so many different forums. And I've always been curious about, how did you come into HR and something about your life? I think that's a good point to start for our listeners to know. So I invite you to just share a bit about your journey. What has brought you here? What brought you to HR? What has made you fall in love with HR and stay with it for such a long time? So, JK, would you want to go first and then probably
hear from Swaraj? Sure. Thank you, Mani. Thank you, Swaraj. Mani, who would introduce you then?
If you want to take that chance, please go ahead.
Okay, let me be a little possessive here that I know a little more of you than Swaraj is. I'm sure Swaraj will give me a tough fight for that. So, Mani is indeed, I would say, more than a coach to me, is a great mentor to me. Mani, it's you who have taught me the basics of coaching, who brought me to what I am here today, also in this platform, I should say. Mani is an ICF PCC coach and on his way to the MCC coach, if I can say that, Mani.
Yeah.
And a thorough gentleman, a great human being. That's what. And Swaraj, if you can add to it.
Definitely. Again, Mani and I, go a long way back. We started our ACC journey together in the same batch. And then we're also in the PCC journey together in the same batch. So we have had a lot of time to coach each other. It's not only for the credentialing, but our coaching journey continues. I find Mani as a very powerful coach, and he makes you reflect and learn things about yourself in a very unique way. So I have deep respect for Mani and the way he approaches problems in general. So that's why it's when he reached out to me, I said, yeah, it's a great opportunity to be speaking with two other like-minded people.
Yeah, thank you so much, JK, Swaraj, for such warmth, and I really appreciate the respect we have for each other, and so that I think that's what brings people together to learn from each other. So let me come back to that thing about your own journey.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mani, if I was to sort of look back, I think I would say with all humility that the signs were always there, but not in the conventional way. Let me admit that I sort of grew up in a convent school, with incredibly bright friends. And I knew I was not definitely there as a topper. I was a very average student, if at all, I would say a little below average. But somewhere there was this spark in me. I mean, I would say one of those guys who had a lot of enthusiasm in mimicking people, cutting jokes. And there was this sort of a natural confidence, I would say, in connecting with others, even connecting with strangers. And if somebody wanted to sort of catch up with a strange guy who joined the school, I would be the one who would happily do it for anybody or even for myself. I sort of enjoyed it, I would say. Even at home, whenever guests came, I would be the first one who would jump ahead. I had to be controlled. I will watch them, observe them. End of their visit, I might even mimic them with their permission. So, and more importantly, I loved how people responded to me, and I think that stayed with me a lot. I was a science student. I dumped it much against my wishes of my parents and my brother, who were engineers. I moved on to take economics. Moving on, I would say I even did a lot of theater, mono act, drama. All this had a lot of what I would say things that allowed me to connect with emotion and people at a very deeper level, even characters for that matter. So I even remember in college, I even took, not that I was a great teacher or something, but I did take tuitions for students in my own class, my friends, who did not do so well. Combined studies, I would take that lead. I enjoy teaching, whatnot. And somewhere I think I realized that I should do something related to people, and it should not be even economics. I mean, that is what I took from science, moving to arts, thinking economics is my area.
Okay.
Subsequently in career, of course, I went on to therefore take up MA in social work with specialization those days, which is called the personal management specialization. Moving on, then I moved into an HR career. I should say, even mid-career, I had this offer for sales and marketing. I obviously was not very keen about it. Much importantly, even a business head role, I sort of felt I should stick on to HR because I doubted whether I would get the same joy if I did switch, or that way. I remember in one of those instances, a senior leader laughed when I said, "Can I play the business head role and still retain the HR role?" He said, "Come on, no, you have not caught it." And it's true, I didn't catch that much, but there was this possessiveness. I would say I will stop here. Therefore, that's what sort of kept me committed, I would say, over these years. What drew me into HR was people, and I still love every bit of being with people, and and that's sort of, I would say, what made me get into HR, Mani.
Wonderful. So I catch, two keywords which you talked about, the connections you spoke about, connecting with people and emotions, and the contributions you wanted to make, even, talking to strangers or tuitions or teaching, and the joy you got from both these. And that's the essence I draw from your journey so far.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Swaraj, what happened with you?
Yeah, that was a very, very interesting introduction from JK. If I go back to my journey, Mani, all through my schooling and college days, I had a very strong affinity with mathematics, with maths. I loved maths and maths loved me. So it was a two-way affair, I would say. So when I got into my MBA in the year 1997, I was not very sure. I had a very open mind where I want to go. I had some background in HR prior to that, but I had not made up my mind when I got into MBA. I would say in my first term, a few classes into what we call as the OB1, or the organizational behavior one, which was taught by Father Abraham, who I have deep respect for him, who is no more. But Father Ebb's class, getting into that for a few sessions, it told me, yeah, this is what I want to do. But of course, there was a voice in my mind which was asking me, so what happens to your maths? I had no answer at that time, but my love for HR at that time had grown bigger. So once I got into my career, I remember one of my first managers asking me, "Hey, you decided to specialize only in HR, where you look at all your friends, they have got multiple specialization, they have the choice of going anywhere." And my answer to her was, "Yeah, I can do so many things within HR itself." So that has stayed with me. I grew in HR, though I kept on changing companies. I mostly stayed as a generalist in my early part of my career. I did a bit of this, bit of that. I have done heavy recruiting. I have done, learning and development, processes, all those things. I kept on growing in the generalist line till I became a head of HR. About a few years back, about 10 years back, I was a head of HR for a large side, organization. But at some point in time, I decided that I want to be a specialist, not a generalist. That's the time when I actually made the switch. And the global exposure is something that I was craving for. I wanted to work with multiple cultures, multiple geographies, different sets of mind, explore. So that's where I got into a global role, and it's something that I have been thoroughly enjoying. And that slowly, my love for numbers started taking shape. In every role that I was doing, I started seeing how HR analytics actually can help sharpen decisions. It can help in growing every aspect of HR. And that's where I kept on focusing more and more on the numbers. So in my current role, where I, overall look at HR strategy, at the same time, I also look at analytics and how these two talk to each other. I feel these two to be two sides of the same coin, and that's something that I enjoy thoroughly. So that's where I am at my HR journey.
Wow. So, I can say some maths helped you add up things finally. In that sense, right? And it's fascinating to see, right, how it has evolved. I think that's the way people normally talk about that. You start as a generalist and then you figure out what you want to do. It gets more clarity for you when you want to move into that specialized area of the work you want to do. And so how did it evolve for you, JK, from in the HR space, your own career?
Yeah, I think early years, 1990 is when I sort of moved into, a typical corporate career as a management trainee. I think those days, I started off, at the shop floor in the factory. And therefore, it was more those days, as we call it, the IR, which got a little refined to talk about ER later. So industrial relations, and it was baptism in fire. So at that point of time, I really got scared because it's hardly less than 3 months. I was in the midst of a strike. In 4 months, I experienced a garau myself. So at that time, I got really shocked. Why the hell is life for me like this? But looking back, I think it was a blessing in disguise. It was a great grounding. So 1990s, I would say, was, the typical personnel manager, the personnel function, I would say, was more about being the discipline keeper, the peacemaker, the agreement maker, I would say, or conflict resolver. And it suited very well with what I sort of visualized possibly. It was also labor law compliance, ensuring payrolls were smooth and good, some amount of recruitments, to sort of call it. I think subsequently, possibly in the 2000s, I would say it was more about, we started to talk a little more higher. While it was there in the 90s, I would say a little about leadership development, human resources development, more talking about what is it to be a strategic partner. those words came. HR as a business partner. I mean, HR was a business partner, but the emphasis started to become a lot more. Culture building became an agenda of HR. It was always, but then the phrasing, the voice, all that sort of became a lot more sharper. I would say subsequently in 2010s onwards, it was more about succession planning. I think it's about data and insights, no more hindsights, hunch and all started. If you start talking about in my hunch, you are gone. So it sort of became far more people-centric. Needless to say, Mani, Swaraj, when the pandemic came, it became a lot more in terms of well-being. Well-being became a strategy. It's not just a nice to have feeling. So I would say that's how the roles got so much evolved. And today we speak about tech and AI so much and moved into action of no more talk but action. We've got to bring that to the table. DEIB, so much so we are talking about. I think the articulation improved, the focus improved, the highlights became stronger to you on your face. That's the evolution that I see.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you were talking, the picture you painted, JK, about the change in vocabulary. And it's so interesting to note. And I think that's what, Swaraj, step in.
Mani, one more thing that I found interesting while JK was talking about it, his emphasis on how it was always been, but now it became more.
So the highlight and how it has become sharper.
Exactly. And we saw those changes coming in. When we started working when we started seeing the big IT revolution with Y2K, and then suddenly everything changing, bigger global exposure. So things which were there, let's say business and HR, now it became business HR, So culture as a part of initiatives, now culture becoming the foundation of initiatives. Those integrations that JK called out, I think those have been the real evolution. Even if we talk, let's say AI today, we are actually at that phase. We are talking about AI and HR, but all of us are working towards AI being a part of HR. I think that is what is going to drive success. Great point, JK.
Yeah, so Swaraj. And I just want to talk about culture and business partnering a little later, because that's something which I don't want to miss out on. But at this stage, a thought comes to my mind when you look back, both of you, right? And you talked about this evolution. Now, if you see, do you feel that all that was expected and it should have happened anyway in a natural evolutionary way, or do you think it just happened because it was kind of forced?
My take on that would be, Mani, I don't think anything was ever forced. What happened was, it would have anyway happened. But what happened, there were catalysts which made things move faster. Okay, globalization of the the economy got globalized long time back, but the globalization of the workforce that truly started with the post Y2K era, where we started seeing frequent interchange of or exchange of cultures, people traveling, working in other countries, people from other countries coming to India. That became much more faster, and that worked as a catalyst. People started seeing things with a global perspective. So that's something I strongly feel has helped us, reshape.
Sure.
Good one. Yeah.
And probably, the COVID exploded even further opportunities in terms of bringing us remotely in touch with people. Now that you were, geographically, limitations were gone, right?
Yeah.
And then you were working with people not only in a physical environment, but now also trying to build those connections and relationships while seeing each other in the box, as we call it, right? So, what in your own life, do you see anyone who has influenced your, kind of liking for this profession? Because you both seem very passionate about what you do. So anyone you may want to recall and bring in and talk about a little?
So Raj, or asking me, Mani?
Both
You
of
should.
you, go ahead the way you wish
Okay.
to.
See, I would say, Mani, if I were to recall, there are several people. I know any acquaintance itself has been a great teacher. There were a lot of role modelism that I would have sort of like a sponge taken
Hmm.
from various people. But if I were to sort of start thinking before I got on to HR, one of the role model was a gentleman by name PNK Pillai, who has written quite a few books on industrial relations. It so happened one of my dad's colleagues introduced me to him, and that
Okay.
was during my college days, and really wondering towards the second year, third year, reaching that stage as to what will I do after this. All
Mm.
this is in the mind, and I think that was a beautiful divine meeting that had happened, and he shared with me some books he wrote, and that
Okay.
was about human relations.
Mm.
There
Mm.
goes the spark, and he spoke, yeah, and he was a man who believed in union management relationships a lot and things like that. So it was the early day books that he had written. So I think
Sure.
one person before the start.
Mm.
The other I would say is my first cousin, my dad's elder brother's first son, Mr. MGN Unithan.
Mhm.
He was within the family. I used to look up to him because I've gone during holidays in Bangalore when he was in Brookbond.
Mm.
And I remember his room had recruitment manager. That was his title those days. But I
Okay.
knew that he had studied HR. He went on to do quite a few things, studies, and I liked the way he was dealing with people or talking once in a while about people and things like that. I think
Mm.
those two I would say start with.
Sure.
Uh, of course, in college, several professors, Dr.
Yeah.
T.K. Nair, K.N. George, Fatima Vasan, a lot of names come to my mind. Then I would say, of course, in early part of the career, I think the baptism in fire I told you,
Mm.
Mani, Suraj. I just can't forget individuals like Ram Babu, Kannan, then subsequently N.C. Venugopal, M.M. Murugappan, Mr. Subaya, promoter family members who have deeply influenced me, and hardcore professionals who brought a sort of, I would say, really pushed me and made me do so well. I think thanks to many, many of them. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
naming everybody. Even coming to today's context, my close colleagues who work with me, be it even the founder chairman, Dr. Ramachandra Galla, the co-founder and, today's chairman, who is Jay Galla, many, many others. If I go on to name, everybody was in a way
Yeah.
a role model or the other. But some of those names are what comes to the top of my mind.
Wonderful. I mean, amazing list of people who have contributed to where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I look back, Mani, while JK was talking, I was kind of scanning through my past. There have been many people, many influencers, managers, colleagues, team members who had a deep impact on me. I spoke about Father Ebb, who took the OV class. But in my working career, I was fortunate to have a lot of great managers or CHROs who were also my mentors. I would like to call out three names, who I feel had the biggest impact on me, and I still remember their learnings. The first name who comes to my mind was my manager or head of HR for in my early career when I was in Chennai, Mr. Mohan Kumar, C. Mohan Kumar, when I was working for Kane Energy. Great person. And then the second name which comes to my mind is Mr. Amitabh Bhagat, who was again head of HR and my manager when I was with Franklin Templeton. And he remains a close friend too. And of course, my current CPO, Kate Parente. Like all three of them had huge influence on me in shaping my career, in shaping what I love, what I want to do. If I look back and try to find what are the common threads
Mm.
between three of them, I think they have a great combination of A, being great human beings, B, focusing on relationships, collaboration, and C, at the same time, being the action oriented people. The balance between relationship and action. That's
Right.
something that stayed very close to me, and my love for action actually, you know, has been inspired by the three of them. Of course, I don't want to undermine so many other people, but if I have to just pick up the three names, these three names come to my mind.
Yeah, and I can pick up when you talk about relationships and action. I'm also picking back on what JK talked about, connecting with people, right? And somewhere that seems to be the underlying theme. And the gratitude you have for people probably makes you the leaders you are, because you are looking back at people who have really shaped your lives, and that's amazing quality to have.
And money are also role models in union leaders,
Hmm.
who made you pragmatic.
Yeah.
Those are also great contributors.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
remember Anthony Pillai, C. Govindarajan, they are leaders who are no more there, Ram Das, Adinarayan. I'm just saying, people who have actually taught you, and you saw something in them and you sort of
Yeah.
learned so much. It's not that you are the management negotiator there, but you
Hmm.
learn a lot from them as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're talking about these qualities, both of you, JK and HR, what comes to your mind when we think of HR professionals today? Like, if you have to kind of, give a list of things which you feel are non-negotiable for someone to be in HR. I can pick up some from what you've said already.
Sure.
Ability to connect, build those relationships, have that intent to work with people, help them. But if you have to kind of put together few
Yeah.
things, maybe Swaraj, if you wish to go ahead, what comes to your mind? Skills or qualities which you feel are non-negotiable today for an HR professional?
Yeah.
So, Mani, in the era where we live, where we live today, the future keeps on evolving every day. But some core ingredients remain constant. The first one that comes to my mind is the focus on people. Any great HR leader needs to have that focus, connection, or whatever we call it. Second one, process. It's people, process, and then comes perspective or the vision for the future. Of course, it's more like a triangle. It's all these three have critical role to play: people, process, and perspective. How do these visionaries bring out their perspective or their vision for the future, translate that to people programs, and lay the foundation for stronger processes? I think this triangle is critical for success of today's generation and also for future.
People,
Fantastic.
process, perspective.
The
Okay.
three P's from Suraj. I like that. Really nice. So, Mani, if I were to say, definitely, I mean, like Swaraj started off, uh, that passion for people has to be natural. It has to be
Hmm.
genuine. And it's starting with interpersonal relationships as a very, very basic foundation. It
Hmm.
should be there. You should have that concern for people. While you have concern for everything, but I mean, ultimately today we'll have to look at that balance between people, profits, and all that. So
Yeah.
that's one core thing. Uh, the second important, I would say, is about knowing your business clearly, having that acumen about what is that business that you, for example, for me, it's a group role, and I have to have some clear, in-depth understanding of what each business in the group holds for and what are
Hmm.
their challenges. And unless you are able to understand that and connect with that, you cannot connect people from that, otherwise you will just be a standalone. And
Yeah.
that's where I think you sort of start relating the business challenges to people and conceive what is best for that sector or that business, and even
Hmm.
connect certain things commonly from a conglomerate perspective and see what needs to be done across. So that's one. And the third in today's world is your understanding of technology. That is crucial in today's world. So I
Hmm.
would put together these three. Not that others are not important. There are several other things, but I love the aspect of what Swaraj talked about, processes and perspective. Extremely important as well. Thank you.
Yeah. And that balance you talked about, right? People profit balance. I think how do you strike that balance is something which confounds a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I like that point which you said about understanding the business. And, you can't remain isolated as a function unless you integrate yourself with what's going on in the system. You really
Yeah.
don't contribute effectively, right? So, just coming back to that people profit thing for a
Yeah.
moment. There are a lot of HR initiatives which happen, and we look at not only, so I always think of HR as a function, like a machine. While you are ensuring that the machine continues to function efficiently, you do all the repair work, training, putting it, in shape, keeping it in shape. You're also looking at building new machines or improving the efficiency or innovating and moving ahead and looking at the future, right? In all of this, how do you really demonstrate what is the return on what HR is doing? How does that come out?
Yeah. So, clearly, once you understand what is that business standing for, or the overall larger purpose of the group and the vision of each businesses, then you will only look at initiatives that has a linkage to an outcome for that business. Otherwise, business leaders are, just not going to take you and rub shoulders with. You will be seen as to be invited as and when required. Now, for you to be rubbing shoulders and be an equal business leader shaping the business strategy, you need to show this connection of what initiative will help you achieve that while they struggle for certain things. Not only for struggling matters, even for matters that they're doing well. Maybe you got to do something ahead right now. And that linkage when you bring, they start turning their heads to you. Not just that, and you will find over a period of time that you get invited to, sort of discussions where not necessarily HR is a subject, but HR is a subject.
So it kind
You
of buys
understand what I
your
mean?
place on that table, right? Because you're showing that
Yeah,
intent and the connect with
correct,
what will help them
correct.
achieve their objectives.
True. So
Yeah.
be it building the right culture, developing the future leaders, driving engagement, ensuring that the business is ready for change, pivoting sometimes. All this is a huge contribution and impact that you can make.
Yeah. I
And
like that
therefore the
idea about
linkage.
starting from the business, right? Understanding what
Yeah,
they want and then
true.
tuning your initiative with that, not the other way
Yes.
around, that this is
Yeah,
what we want to do, take it and
true.
run with
True.
it kind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, you were saying
Mani,
something.
was it for me or for JK?
JK, you had something to add when I took
No.
you?
That's it. That's it.
Sure. Okay.
So, Mani, when we're talking about the return on investment, I was kind of thinking, if there is one HR metric which is not there visibly displayed, but is definitely there behind everything, that is ROI. If as a leader in the people analytics space, I have to drive towards something that is ROI, or in other terms, the impact of it. So whatever we do in the field of HR, how does that translate? And where does that translate? Gone are the days when, people used to do initiatives for the sake of initiatives. There was a phase, I would say in the early 2000s when there is this lot of concept of fun parties and pizza parties and all those things. No, question is, what is the outcome that we are getting out of anything? Be it culture initiatives, be it our, even if you look at, let's say, HR analytics, data for the sake of data has got no meaning. No one appreciates. Even doing just analytics is fast losing its value. Question is, how are these analytics leading into insights? And how are these insights leading into business impact? And that goes in every field. If you're doing some initiative, let's talk about learning and development. If you're doing learning and development, attending X number of training programs is not a metric that anybody is interested in anymore.
Right.
It's more about how have you translated that into your productivity, into your workplace, ultimately into your business results, and of course towards the society. Name any field in HR. Ultimately, how are you impacting? Talk about recruitment and money coming from a background. I'm sure you'll be very familiar with it. It's not about how many CVs you source.
Right.
It's not about how many CVs you shortlist. And even at times, it's not even about how many selections are made. It's about what impact are those selections making towards the growth of the organization. That's where the ROI of HR comes in. And your point is very timely, Mani. All of us should be focused more on the ROI or the impact.
Yeah, I think what I like what you're saying, Swaraj, is about what to measure. That's such a powerful thing to look at, because you could be measuring a lot of things, but which of them are really relevant, and also tying it up to why you're doing something, right? It's like Simon Sinek's Find Your Why.
In Six Sigma, there is this concept of 5 whys. I think like keep on asking why, and why, till you come to the point of the core problem statement.
In fact, Swaraj, if I may to add, I sometimes think of some of these things. So many things we are measuring when it comes to one of the good questions that I have found to myself is, so what?
Exactly.
So what? No, what is that? So what? Think of it, if a CEO asked back to you.
Right.
So, and then if you can give that connection and the story behind it, I think you make sense.
So you are taking me to the days where I used to work with people on restructuring their resumes. And I would ask this question when someone had written something on their CV, I would say, so what? If you cannot talk about that, how it has impacted, then, how does it make sense really? Wonderful points. Thank you so much, both of you, for this. And, which kind of brings me to this slightly bigger question. And I've always found it awkward when people talk of HR as a support function. And I've always wondered that how is it that we, after so many, important contributions that HR space brings to business, why is it still continuing to be called as a support or a service function and not a strategic function? You mentioned about it, right, HR, that vocabulary is changing. So do you see a real change happening in industry? Is HR a business function now and not a support function?
Mani, I don't like that.
I know, I don't like that. But I think I wanted to bring this out because I still hear people talking about,
No, I know it is in many ways still a reality and a truth in many organizations. It's not that it's changed completely in, say, every organization. I can only comment about me and comment about my team, my organization for sure. I think we have moved definitely from just being a service function. I still remember days when we talked about service excellence. Now it's about strategic excellence. And therefore we are definitely moved from there. That's what I would start. Let me also hear Swaraj, and then I would substantiate a lot more onto that. Yeah.
I have a similar view. We are, when I say we, I mean the HR industry as such, the people function, globally everywhere. We are on the journey. HR being a service function, I would say it has fast got obsolete. Service, if something is service, that's a function which can ideally be outsourced at some point in time. And it's getting done. The parts, some parts of HR, of course, there are day-to-day activities which have to be done, which have to be centralized, which have to be automated. I'm not taking anything away from that. But the bigger picture of HR is purely around strategy. Again, I have been fortunate to work for visionary leaders who see HR or the people function as a part of the bigger table. When I say bigger table, I of course mean the executive table, where HR is a partner, where HR is involved in every strategic business discussion, business decision. Even if I look at my role today, heading HR strategy, it's not so much about, let's say, what happens every day. It's more about how do we take up our organization, our people to the next level. How are we thinking about the major disruptions coming ahead of us? Okay, things like the pandemic, they are once in a lifetime, unexpected. Nobody could have planned for this. But how organizations showed resilience towards it. Moving from there, AI is more predictable in the sense the launch of AI was phenomenal, but now we are seeing AI getting integrated into everything we do. So strategically, how are we getting ready to embrace AI, to embed AI, both embrace and embed into everything that we do so that our businesses are successful? Are we thinking about our future workforce or the workforce planning? How is it going to look like on the face of AI? With the future of work, with so many people working hybrid, the talent is available globally. You don't have to go to a specific market to source a talent. You can have talent anywhere in the world doing a particular kind of niche work for you. How do we embed that into culture? How are they part of our organization? Those are the futuristic strategic thinking. And I believe leaders have started seeing that there is significant progress. If you had asked me this question about 15 years back, I would have probably said we have a long way to go. Today, I would say that we have made significant progress in the organization that I worked with, or the organization that I work closely with my friends and peers. I see that there is significant progress. I would take the shot and say that HR has started becoming significantly more strategic than it was, let's say, 15 years back. And HR is a partner on the bigger table.
Great. Wonderful. Yeah. You wanted to add something, JK? You said you'll wait for Swaraj.
Yeah, that's true. In fact, I was trying to get some cues. The other, I used to say this, and that is something that every HR professional should sort of, I would say, introspect, look at the mirror and ask yourself. The fact is that, hardcore business leaders, who drive revenues, drive the bottom line, they are able to speak the language of HR. The introspection should be, is the HR able to speak the language of the business?
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
And that's the real gap. And I think that's what all of us need to introspect and just go ahead and bridge it. It's not huge rocket science. That is something that I have been consciously reflecting every time to see that I don't get to sit and think that it is Latin or Greek or something like that. It's important that you know it.
No, that's a very powerful point you made, JK. Is HR able to speak the business language? And the way Swaraj is talking about AI coming into it, and the integration which is happening, the way I specifically wanted to talk about that partnering word which you used, Swaraj, because when we talk about coaching, partnering is there all in your head, and specifically in terms of HR, when you say partnering, what does it really mean for someone who's starting in HR, let's say, when we say business partnering? So a couple of years into HR, what does it translate into on ground? Really? So invite any of you to start and, maybe just add.
Subramani, the first thing, if you're starting, I'm saying it from my experience and saying this, if you're starting at, say, the shop floor, or you are starting at field and starting as an HR professional, I think how is that business process? Get to know that and not look at what can I do. Understand the whole business process talk about, and those at the early stages, you can ask anything. You don't have to feel about it. You can ask anytime later also. Keep that curiosity, ask about the business, understand, learn the business, and then look at, if this is my business, what can I do? Don't get on to stretching your legs before sitting. You'll fall off. If that can be done, I think that would be a great start, and a starting first step, I would say, Mani, on what you would want to say for a young HR professional.
So that looks like a 3-step process, right? First, understand the business, know it fully well, and then ask whatever you wish to ask before you even think of what you can do for it. Right. Thank you so much.
So, Mani,
Swaraj?
I was kind of chuckling because I thought there was a contradiction in your question. You asked about, for somebody who is starting the career, and something about business partnering. I feel these are a little contradictory. When we start the career, we can probably think about business partnering, but not exactly acting as a business partner. Takes experience, takes learning. And that's where I completely agree with JK. You need to learn business and you need to learn your domain. So if this question is addressed towards people who are early in their career, I would say that take your time and make your fundamentals clear about both. One, about business. Understand business, everything, not only the jargons, but how business operates, how it works. And two, strengthen your HR fundamentals. Learning from academics, learning from organization are two different things. Once you think that you have mastered to a large extent both of these, understanding of business and understanding of HR, that's where we think about partnership. I'll just give one example about partnership. When you talk about a partnership, think of rowing a boat together. It's not one doing for the other. It's both doing together. Partnership is a partnership when both of them have a role to play. So when I, as a person, understand my business needs, then I apply my HR fundamentals to contribute. And at the same time, I get the support from the business to help me help them. That should be the mindset for someone who is early in the career, who is learning the tricks and traits of business partnering.
Thank you for that wonderful metaphor you used of rowing together. And thanks also for correcting me on that question, because that's a learning for me. Because I've seen a lot of HR VP roles with 1 year, 2 year experience, and I've wondered, what is it? But that gives a lot of clarity in terms of experience, what you're talking about.
Mani, it's also what organizations also say, no, you are hired as business partner.
Yeah. So titles.
It's a title. They start learning things like that. In fact, I would say, Swaraj, if I were to correct a little to what you say, you should learn the trade and not the tricks of the trade.
Okay. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting add-on. So so we are talking about knowing the business, the HR space fully well, add to it your own experience and learning, and ask whatever you can at that stage, and then see what you can contribute. I mean, that's a recipe for you to move into that space of business partnering sometime.
Well said, man. Yeah.
So how, when you all spoke about, both of you talked about culture, at some point or other, you're talking about that that's something which is a buzzword in the industry. I think every leader, not only HR, but every leader wants to talk about culture and culture building and how they are creating something within the organization. So is there a role for HR to play beyond, the functional part in terms of creating or building a culture?
Of course. I mean, obvious, yes, for sure, Mani. It's definitely, I would say, a curator, an influencer, builder of culture is what I would say. I'm saying it's not only HR, but it's a key character, a key catalyst. I would say, in terms of influencing the culture, building the culture, and so on. So, how do you sort of enable people understand the values of the organization, ensure that these values are actually translated to proper attitudes and behaviors? How do you sort of check and facilitate that leaders are really becoming role models to it? And that's how you ensure that culture is built, culture is sustained, and in a way you should also measure once in a while as to how is it all going. So
Yeah.
it's a huge big role. And to that extent, I would say, no, those I was talking about 90s to 2010s and subsequently. I think culture has definitely become an important agenda item, and it's part of the HR strategy as to how you build culture, how to influence, how you sustain. Yes.
Okay. So you before I come to Swaraj, there's something you talked about, and which kind of my antennas got up suddenly. You said measuring culture. And, in my mind, it's very subtle. Culture is something, which you typically, people say you feel how things are without really noticing. I mean, that's the example people give,
Yeah.
like fish
Yeah.
swimming in the water. It doesn't
True.
even notice the water. So what does that measuring mean in this context? JK,
You're
yeah.
asking me,
Yeah,
Mani?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, measuring is, say, for example, you have articulated your values. It could be on your walls, it could be on your books, and so on. So what? The question again. So have you translated that to actionable attitudes and behaviors that people can understand? If you call it, say, experiences for us, for example, in the context of Amara, experiences is a value. So what is that you expect of people when you say experiences? Experiences, just for your understanding, Mani, Swaraj, it's not about the experiences that we have, it's about the experiences that we provide to all our stakeholders, so that it is a lasting impact creation that you do with any stakeholder that you come in touch with. So how do I do that? How do I make experiences really impactful, stay with the person? Even if it could be a candidate who came for interview, the person gets selected or not, can you ensure that there has been really touching experience, and that person really looks forward to join you sometime, join the family sometime? So that now you got to talk about these in terms of what is the kind of attitude you should have, what is the kind of behavior you should have, and not just there. You should teach them, train them, and measure them. So for us, it is also integrated into the performance management system, right? In fact, for us, the values and the culture are so critical. In fact, there are three parts to our performance management. One is about the larger objectives that people need to achieve. Then it's the measurement of attitudes and measurement of behaviors. We believe attitudes leads to behaviors.
Yeah.
So we measure both. At a higher level, we also take peer inputs as well. So when that is put together as scores, you have the objective score, you have the attitude score, you have the behavior score. Now we have made it extremely clear that if your attitude and behavior score is lower than the objective score, your final performance score for the year will be the lower score.
Okay.
To that extent of saying you cannot be achieving your objectives by having skeletons on the way. It's important. So there are people, who can be very smart in achieving objectives, completely violating the values, right? It could be even, when I'm saying values means not just integrity alone. It is the way you deal with people, how you drive accountability, how you show equally respect, how do you create strategic thinking within teams, all that. So it's important. On the contrary, the same thing for us. If attitudes and behavior score is higher than your objective score, then the average only is taken. Not that we want country club managers who will try to satisfy everybody. Right? So it can be measured. Not just that, not your annual and quarterly measurements. You have your own experiences surveys that we do. We have sentiments that we pick up. We have, look out for in your succession reviews are values coming under discussion. Every time when I personally do this, every time when we have a process called AR Star, which is our succession and talent review process. When we do the succession discussions, I, like that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you do that striking.
Yeah.
So how many? I keep counting how many times this values come up in these discussions. While you concentrate, this is something that you and talk about that. Not embarrass anybody in public, but talk to a leader. In all your discussions, you are only number focused. When it takes so much of time to prod you and talk about behaviors, values, and things like that. So all this, you can lead by example. You can measure and find out these things. Show it back to the entire teams that matters and say, how critical is this? So it is not just feeling. It has to be felt for sure. And it has to be measured. And when we do that is how you institutionalize culture.
Wonderful.
In fact, one more thing, Mani, that reminds to me, some of this teaching training that we do in the Amara context on values, we do large-scale interactive process, LSIT as we call it. All the newcomers that come during the year, including operators, we bring them together under one roof, and it's a large-scale interactive process on how we talk our 5 values, translate that to attitudes, behaviors, share to them real life stories that have happened in the context of Amara in the past, how we believe it can be taken, a lot of exercise workshops, all this anchored by leaders themselves, no single consultant from outside. And it is the leadership team members who on rotation come and do this. And therefore, who is leading it by example? So these are also critical. And that is where people get goosebumps and say, we should live the Amara Raja way.
Yeah, wonderful. I like the energy you had when you were talking about it, and I can see how it connects with you. Specifically, the point about leaders themselves doing it, not bringing people from outside to talk about us, but we talk about ourselves. I think that's a wonderful point.
Right.
Yeah, Swaraj.
Sorry, Mani, having said that, you are also therefore putting the onus on the leaders every time when they preach, they end up holding it too closer to themselves. They're setting the tone, and they're actually ending up to practice it on daily life.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
So, Mani, I think JK has covered it quite well in terms of how he sees culture, what's the role of HR. I see a lot of similarities over there. Maybe the only thing that I would like to add is culture and values are your DNA. For every organization, that's your DNA. And what would you do with your DNA? You would like to have strong DNA, which defines your lifelong success. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Second, I think JK also touched on that. It's a partnership. Does your organization see culture and values are things which are driven by HR? Or are they jointly developed and deployed?
Yeah.
And that's what makes the difference for us. Culture and values are co-owned. It's not dictated by HR, or it's not told by HR that you do this. It's like, everywhere it's a partnership, how our culture and how our values evolve. And third thing, coming to the role of HR, JK took a lot of examples. Like HR can be a curator, can be a facilitator, can be a builder. I would probably just use one term for that. It's situational. You need to wear the cap based on the situation. At times, like JK called out, you need to build. At times, you need to curate. At times, you need to facilitate. At times, you need to measure. But all of these have to be done with my earlier point, partnership.
Right. So it's a partnership is a continuum, and you wear the hat depending on where what it demands.
And it's also possible that there would be situations where you need to change the roles. In a partnership, that happens, right? Even if you go back to my metaphor of rowing boats, you are not in the constant position all through. There may be times when you want to change the positions, So yes, it's a partnership to build, maintain, and uphold our DNA.
Right.
Right.
That's a great input which both of you have given, and it builds a picture of where culture is not a single person's responsibility. I mean, theoretically, all of us know that, but that element of partnering and changing roles and developing it together, which also brings me to the question of small organization versus bigger organization. We say that, so if an organization also already is very big, how do you bring about that cultural change, which looks to be something very different from a smaller organization where there are fewer people or fewer interactions, probably fewer connections? And something which I was talking to a leader some time back, and who have expanded suddenly from 50, 60 people to about 200 people. And one of the things which came up in our session was he talked about people are not talking, and which kind of made me think about conversations which we have. How do people interact, and which you brought out, JK, right, in terms of experiences. So
Right.
is there a way you think of culture as built on those conversations, and is there something which you can maybe bring from your experience as to what contributes to people having more conversations?
Sure. I mean, conversations is a critical part of nurturing the culture, right? And like I said in the succession review, are you bringing cultural aspects into the discussion? Of course, getting high performance and becoming a high performance organization is part of the culture. It's a high performance culture, we say,
Yeah.
right? It's important, but there are elements to that. It can't just be revenues, and it can't just be numbers of bottom line alone. It has to also be on values. It has to be on behaviors. So even your so-called water cooler discussions or coffee breaks, allowing customs to evolve, rituals to happen, all built around, and making it a facilitative culture. For example, in our corporate office building money, we have this coffee breaks that people take, which is natural in every office. Post lunch, we have at least, I would say, 50, 60 people who will be going around a walk on the building, not just trying to get the vitamin fill, but also to ensure that you have these conversations of what's really happening between the teams. It's not necessarily sometimes the like-minded teams. There are friends from various functions who move. There are functional friends who move together. They talk about this happened, that happened. Therefore, you're creating those space. So rituals, customs, all these are also part of this. So conversations have a huge impact on not just building, but on sustaining the culture. I think experiences, interactions are all extremely critical that way. Yes.
Sure. And I'll also remember talking to, I think, Swaraj, we were talking about that, during COVID time, how that part of learning, that conversations which used to happen at the workspace, someone just walking by and talking to you and discussing some idea in your mind. I think that's the space which kind of got disrupted in COVID, something which used to happen organically, right?
Yes, Mani. I think the key point over here is conversations and communication are core to any culture, any situation, any development. So, irrespective of the size of the organization, if the organization is very small, maybe the communication style is different. If the organization is very large, again, the communication style is different. But communications and conversations need to happen. Culture does not come out overnight. It's built over a long period of time, and it goes through its own process of course correction, development, enhancement, changing with times. Okay, so all through, our biggest tool to ensure that the change is continuous, it's accepted, and it's kind of implemented, that's communication or conversation. Irrespective of the way how it happens. Maybe there was a time when every communication or every conversation used to be in person. People used to meet up in formal meetings or for lunch, dinner, all those things. Yeah, because people were in close proximity. Today, in a global landscape, you don't have that luxury. People are all over. Within a team, you can have people spread over 5 different continents, or maybe 20 different cities.
Yeah.
It may not be practical to bring all of them. Yes, definitely there is advantage of in-person interaction, conversation, but it may not be practical all the time. So how do you
Yeah.
answer those? How do you keep your communication channels open? How do you keep your conversations ongoing? I'm using both communication and conversation together because
Right.
though significantly overlapping, but both of them have their unique requirements too. So how do we ensure, how do we facilitate that those continue, uninterrupted? That something helps us define our culture.
Yeah, how do you facilitate? I mean, that's the key word, right? How do you facilitate so that those conversations and communication can happen uninterrupted? I like that, thought about facilitating it. And so when people talk about, just extending that a bit, Swaraj, when people talk about cultural change, so do they really mean that they want to move from culture A to culture B, or is it more about adapting and fine tuning and refining, or having more clarity about where they're coming from? Or what? How does that make sense? Because when I do facilitation work, sometimes you have a requirement from an organization and they say we want you to facilitate a workshop around cultural change, and you sometimes wonder what is it that could be going on. What's your sense on that?
Mani, it's a very loaded question, I would say.
Hmm.
Cultural change, you know, if we are talking about culture being the DNA, we are talking about probably evolution. We are talking about, incremental adoption based on the time situation changes. Let's say the same example that I took, uh, people working in a global environment. Yes, you
Yeah.
need to adapt to that.
Hmm.
AI coming in, again, we need to adapt to that.
Hmm.
But there have been very rare examples when organization wants to change its culture completely because your culture has defined you so far.
Hmm.
Okay, what we need to do is we need to adapt, we need to evolve. That
Hmm.
is my high level view on this.
So more of aligning it to how things are changing. Could that be the thing you're talking about? Yeah, bringing in that
Your business,
alignment.
your business requirement could have changed.
Yeah.
Industry you are working within could have changed.
Hmm.
Your leadership could have changed. Again, these are very generic points about the industry. And different organizations go through different challenges from time to time. So you need to
Hmm.
change. You need to adapt.
Right. Right.
But overall, changing your culture, I think I personally haven't come across an example like that. But
Hmm.
yeah.
Sure. Thanks. So, uh, so we talked a lot about metrics, data, and I think both of you shared about data is not just numbers, right? How do you tell that story which makes sense?
Yeah.
And that's something, is very relevant for today because we're talking more and more about analytics in different ways. In my own space, like I come from financial service and I've been hearing about predictive analytics. How do you use data to predict risk? Like, for example, when you're lending or when you're looking at cross-selling, those kind of things. So what has changed in the space of HR, from specifically from the purpose of decision making when you talk about analytics or data? So how do you view that in terms of, let's say, building a talent pipeline or managing talent or taking decisions? So I want Swaraj, I want to bring this to you first because I know you specifically handle this part in your current role.
Sure, Mani. Again, when I think of data, again, I think of what I call as a 3I framework. So it starts with idea. You have the idea around the data. Then you change that into insights. Then you change that into impact. So idea, insight, and impact. That's the chain. What does this mean? Idea is a concept. So the traditional ways of reporting HR analytics, let's say we talk about attrition number. we talk about our talent pipeline, we talk about learning hours or employee engagement scores. All these are different ideas about different metrics that can be used. I think sometime back, JK spoke about so what. Yeah, I'm also a big fan of that term. I keep on using so what and what else. So from idea to insight is the stage of so what. If we get these numbers, what does this mean? Let me just stay with one segment.
Sure.
Let's say we're talking about attrition, one of the most regular, analytics. We can give many different cuts of attrition, by location, by business group, by job grade, anything. So what? What does this really mean? Even if we make it attrition reasons why people are leaving, that itself is not insight. We say, let's say, I'm just taking a completely imaginary example. Somebody says 40% of the people are leaving for better opportunities. Okay. So what does this mean? That's where we need to move into insights. Insights can be two ways. They can be looking into the past about what has happened and then taking that into translating that into the insights for the business, something actionable, or it can be futuristic or what we call as predictive analytics. If the trend has been like this, if the market is behaving like that, what does it look like in next 6 months, next 12 months horizon? So insights can be both ways, lagging or leading. And the third part that I spoke about is impact. Again, insights by themselves are just information. What do we do with them? That's where the business impact comes in. You spoke about ROI sometime back, Mani. So impact is the ROI. So if we are doing this program, if we have done, let's say, this engagement survey, we got this scores, we analyzed, we understood, we got the insights, but are we changing something over there which helps us improve our overall engagement? That's where the impact comes in. So in the people analytics journey, anybody who is thinking of a career or a journey in people analytics space, which is a beautiful space, by the way, I love it absolutely. Let's keep in mind the journey from idea to insight to impact. That's critical.
So if I can translate into the language which I understand, Swaraj, the way it looks like is, what am I seeing? What does it really mean? And what is it going to do?
Exactly.
Right?
Well said.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. That makes a lot of sense.
Beautiful, Swaraj. Nice money. I think good summary as well.
Yeah. So how do you see this, JK, in your space? It's a huge organization you're part of. How are you seeing analytics coming and playing a role in especially HR decision making?
Sure. See, I should first of all confess, Mani, Swaraj, that we are on the baby steps of analytics, I would say. But I can confidently say that analytics has definitely shifted the way that we look at talent per se. Earlier, a lot of decisions we would have taken based on intuition, based on experiences. But now we are actually getting to analytics is really helping you to get to data-driven insights like what Swaraj said.
Yeah.
In many ways, while I think it tends to therefore take us to more objective decision making. In fact, one another great benefit beyond the insights is this intuition, experiences is kept a little aside, and we really talk about, in fact, removing biases. That's something, a huge benefit in whatever we have done so far.
Yeah.
Our ability to pick up, when you look at, let's say, I think Swaraj talked about very good examples. Let's take on performance, performance ratings of individuals to teams to functions to linking it to the overall performance of the team. We are able to see that, track the performance patterns, make decisions even to succession. Even to talk about readiness of people. huge benefits that it can. Therefore, it's not just about gathering insights, even about predicting what are the outcomes of the future. I think that bit is pretty beautiful. We are in that, we are yet to gallop there, but I'm seeing huge benefits for organizations to shift gear. I'm sure there's a lot that I need to pick up after this conversation with Swaraj. That's for sure.
Right. And
Anytime.
as usual, you're humble, JK.
Oh, come on, guys.
But I just want to, go a little more deeper on this, Swaraj, because we talked about what to measure, right, a little earlier. The data, there's so much of data today. And as you rightly said, you can cut it and look at it in so many different ways from different angles. So anything which comes to your mind are the key things which you look at as in your role, what are the data which make sense to you, or what are really looks like important for you? I mean, attrition is one thing you spoke about, performance is another thing JK spoke about. What else comes to your mind?
So many things like attrition, performance, let's say learning, recruitment, all these have been the regular analytics which have been there in phases, which are also evolving. What I call as those evergreen metrics.
Yeah.
Sometime back we spoke about ROI, and that's kind of a metric which is not really visible, but everything works towards that. But if I have to think about things which really create an impact in today's world, I would say we are right now passing through a significant changing industry environment right after pandemic. The global workforce, work from home, hybrid workforce, AI, everything put together. This is the biggest disruption we have seen. Every organization is trying to adapt to this. So HR analytics as a function has to be future focused.
Yeah.
Like what are going to be the skills of the future? How do you do your workforce planning for the future? And by the way, workforce planning is one more term which is normally confused with headcount planning. No, they are two different things. Workforce planning is more strategic. It's not about the number of workforce. It's more about how you comprehensively grow your talent to meet the challenges of the future. That's where, if I kind of tie up everything, that's where the business partnering we spoke about comes into place. So here, HR plays the role of showing the future roadmap to the business, and together they evolve their journey, their strategy for the future. So those are the kind of metrics which makes a difference, being future ready. And if we are thinking about the future of HR analytics as a function, I would say that it's more towards making organizations future ready in partnership with business.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Right. And I think it ties up with what JK said very early when he said that, you start from what business needs. And then you work backwards rather than saying that, okay, I have so much data and I have so many tools. What do I build out of that? And that doesn't make sense, right? You look the other way. And that's how you create that integration, which can be impactful. Yeah. So what is this hype about? I won't say hype really. It's actually become a reality. What is this about AI-led, HR tools? How do you see it playing out? Like there's so much happening every day. You have a new development in AI. People talking about so many different tools available and engines and whatnot. How are you seeing? Because it's so rapidly evolving. It's difficult to even keep track and keep pace with the names. Forget about the usage. So how do you both see that? I mean, any of you can jump in and answer.
Swaraj first. I'm the younger one in this.
I would kind of, Mani, I would go back to, let's say, late 90s, second half of 90s, when software was something which was new. I mean to say the mass deployment of software in the workplace was new, be it banks, be it sector. So yes, it was a disruptor. We are in the similar phase, like when it comes to AI, it's a huge disruptor which has come up. We are still in the early stage, Mani. if today we say that we know everything about AI, what is it going to do, how it's going to help, I think we would be, kidding ourselves.
Yeah.
We know a lot, of course, but we don't know what we don't know. Okay, much more is going to come.
Good.
So
I feel good.
The way I see AI today, yes, we should see AI as a partner. We should see AI as an enabler, which is going to help us in doing things in a much better way. There are many early use cases of AI which have already started coming in. So my suggestion would be, let's look at AI from an angle like, what else can it do for us to make our delivery, make our jobs better? With help of AI, let's simply talk about something like a career development. Can AI help me navigate through my organization to find out what are the career opportunities I have, what are the skill sets I have, and kind of bridge those gaps? Okay. Can AI help me look at my candidate pool and suggest how best I can approach those candidates? Okay.
Yeah.
But let's also keep in mind that AI is just a tool. Today, I don't think AI is in a position to replace humans. It's here to augment the thought process and the strategic approach of human. As long as we see it as a partner and develop tools accordingly, I think we are on a great path.
Right. And I also see a lot of usage in the learning and development space, right? I mean, that's where you can actually, so I was talking to someone and they were saying how they're using AI to help people become better speakers. When you have a recording and you use a AI tool to analyze the posture and the usage of the words and how you emphasize and all that. I mean, that could be a wonderful tool when you're looking at, let's say, an executive presence kind of a training, or even for someone else who has to speak to teams. I think, the use cases probably are numerous and evolving, as you say.
Yeah. Huge numbers.
Yeah.
In fact, like Swaraj said, some basic things on efficiency improvement, like the recruitment team today feels extremely delighted. You don't have to manually go through CVs, that screening process. Of course, care to be taken on bias and so on. Scalability is pretty high. I think I completely agree with what Swaraj said. It possibly would help us to augment the HR operations much better with AI. Your speed and agility definitely improves, but it's not going to replace things, because definitely I think that emotional intelligence, the human element, those are extremely critical, and that is something that will be there. But the use cases of AI can be tremendous. I mean, just think about, your bot today talking about any HR policy with so much of ease to the employee.
Right.
You don't have to worry about clarifying it on the phone or through emails and things like that. No, completely taken. You are free of it, and the bot does it so well. I mean, of course, what you feed in, it learns, it does it, and fantastic. And those are things that we should definitely bring in, integrate it into the HR systems and process. And in one way, you enhance the experiences in the case that I set for employees. You enhance efficiency for yourselves, and tremendous benefits that way.
Yeah.
And Mani, just the angle that I kind of missed out, I would like to add to this
Sure.
is, any use of AI has to be within the ethical and the legal parameters. The landscape is evolving.
Right.
Whatever we do, we need to ensure that we are compliant and we are behaving in an ethical fashion.
Yeah, and be very careful about what information you're feeding, because everything is going into that space which is available as a new learning for that tool. Right. So what you share.
In fact, that reminds me when Swaraj said, I think Johnny Taylor, who was the Sherm CEO, or he talked about, AI plus HI is equal to ROI, artificial intelligence plus human insights will actually lead to ROI. In fact, I amended that formula a bit to say in another conference that I spoke about, I said divided by EI, which is ethical insights. Then only ROI comes, and ethical aspect, like Suraj said, is extremely critical. So AI plus HI divided by EI is equal to ROI.
Wow. I think you've given a statement or a framework for a lot of people to work with. I think you wrote something about that on LinkedIn as well. I
Yes,
recall quite
yes.
some
That was
time
something
back.
that I
Yeah,
spoke earlier in a
you spoke
conference
about
which I
that as
did.
well in a
Yeah.
conference. Yes,
So
absolutely.
ethical oversight, very, very critical, like what Swaraj said. Yeah.
Yeah. So for someone, with so much happening, for someone who wants to, let's say, make a career in this space of
Yeah.
HR analytics, what is a good point to start? Let's say, where do they begin their journey? Fresh out of college, what's the way to get started?
I would
I
say,
go,
Swaraj, to add, then I will come in. Yeah, sure.
no, I would kind of go back to what JK had told some time back. Start by understanding your business.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know, if somebody is starting a career in HR analytics, I assume that the person has come with a background of HR analytics. That means HR and analytics. So I'm not going to the knowledge part of it.
Hmm.
But make your analytics useful, you need to understand your business.
Hmm.
That's the first point, Mani. Over to
Right.
you.
And JK spoke about technology knowledge as being one critical
yeah,
non-negotiable thing, right? We are talking about that so that you
exactly.
can't keep out in any case. Yeah.
Right. Right. I think, like Swaraj said, understanding the business and understand the basic metrics required as well for the business, not
Hmm.
just HR metrics, but what does the business need? Then get to your HR metrics. That is one. Second is, I have seen it time and again. I'm not being critical here. Not that I'm an expert, familiarize with some of these basic tools like Excel,
Hmm.
be it the Google Sheets or HRS platform. Then
Yeah.
only you can fall in love with data.
Hmm.
I'm definitely not somebody who loves mathematics like Suraj, but if you have to embrace it. If you have to embrace it, you need to know that basic. I'm not an expert in Excel. I confess I don't know, I would say in many ways. But when you really become an expert on that, you will start falling in love with the analytics, and that's how you will embrace. Then
Yeah.
get on to descriptive analytics, looking at trend analysis, and then you talk about predictive later. So get to these basics, and that's critical.
And my
I'm
sense
sure
is,
Suraj would agree.
and yeah, so my sense is also, JK Swaraj, that you don't need to learn a lot of tools, right? It's
Yeah,
more
yeah,
about, that point
yes,
about falling in love with what you want to do with numbers. Even one tool which you become good at is good enough. And you
right.
can, because many of the tools, the logically they are very similar. Probably it's just the
Yeah, yeah,
interfaces and other things which
yeah,
differ, and there's a learning curve there.
true,
But
true,
I think the
true.
primary thing what you said is about falling in love with that
Yeah, yeah.
space.
Then
Yeah.
only you can build that confidence and start scaling your analytics capability.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anything to add, Suraj, to that?
I think, Mani, I think that was a brilliant point. Yes. How do we apply knowledge? Like, again, I'll go back to my 3 I framework.
Hmm.
How do we create
Hmm.
insight out of the idea, and how do we ensure that the impact is created?
Impact
We
Hmm.
need
assessment.
to
Yeah, yeah, that's a
cover
good
that
one.
entire journey.
Sure. Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of thing for me to take away so far from the discussion, but I just want to kind of bring this all together, as we are ending of this conversation. So we talked about data, we've talked about AI, culture, we've talked about so many different things. And I'm coming to my favorite topic, which I am comfortable talking about, the mindset of coaching. And you both are coach, so that's a space I want to bring some thought on. So how does coaching, or where can coaching bridge, uh, not the gap really? How can it bring together this culture aspect, the data, the leadership, the people aspect of it, the connect? How do you work with that, building that mindset? Or where do you see it coming in and playing a role?
I think Mani, you both are much more seasoned than me on coaching. But with the limited, powerful impact and experience that I have had so far, I think I myself is an example of the way that I do today to some of my team members, to some of my senior colleagues, and people within the organization or outside the organization who come to me, especially within the organization.
Yeah.
They are able to clearly see that impact. how do you sort of not just say you do this, you do that, but rather you sort of ask them, powerful questions. And the more you start in that style, I have realized that you become far more calmer than in a hurry to actually provide solutions. Mani, not exaggerating, you come to my mind many times, that visualization of you. You become calmer. Through questions, you are sort of able to influence people. I think, what to say, coaching has a tremendous effect that way. I mean, if I were to call it on a metaphor thing, I would say like this. In fact, I've used this in a couple of forums also within the organization, I'm saying. I bring this example of saying, let's just look at what you call a large exhibition of paintings. And, people look at paintings and they talk about it. They talk about how great painter and all that. And another person also brings in a painting. It's got great colors, great brush of, multicolors, and you really appreciate the painting. To me, coaching is someone who, or a boss who brings in another painting shouldn't be the case. Coaching is something like you actually bring in a digital canvas to the exhibition, which means you can touch, you can play with it, you feel the visitor itself is empowered, it is able to interact with, and I think that's the power of coaching. And you will really, enjoy from behind as to how they themselves are making things happen, understanding your own potential, and you start really playing with the digital canvas. I mean, that's the way that the power of coaching is. I only wish that more and more people practice this coaching. It's in my view, it's not really caught up that way. It has to catch up a lot. It's a powerful, I would say, a disruptor, a full-blown disruptor, I would say, if people can really implement it.
I like that, interactive and engaging, those two things, and empowering in that sense, because it allows you to experience and become resourceful, as you say, right? Yeah.
I think it was very nicely said, Mani, the way JK put it. Personally, I think I have gained a lot with my coaching journey. Let's look at the core, the markers of ICF, which we can actually use every day. Again, I'm not going in the sequence, but let's talk about a few of those. It starts with how do we establish that agreement or the contract or the problem statement. Half of the times we are not sure of the solution because we don't know what problem are we really trying to solve.
Yeah.
Any coaching journey starts with that, establishing that. How we deploy active listening in our day-to-day work. How are we present? I think JK took this example of not jumping into solutioning. How can we be present? Just hearing out, just being there. How can we evoke awareness? Evoke awareness can be different for different instances. If you're talking about an employee relations issue, the awareness could be about the challenge and what is the probable solution. If you're talking about, let's say, culture, the awareness about could be about what is your culture and where is it taking you? Are there course corrections needed? Or we need to evolve? Have we stayed much behind the timeline? Those are the questions. If we come to HR analytics, that awareness could be that insight to impact that I'm talking about. So yes, that coaching journey, you don't have to do a coaching session every time. I think maybe this is a message for people who are going through the coaching journey and going through the set of markers that ICF provides. It's not about going through each one of those. It's about how do you take the essence out of it and drive it towards the result which is most benefiting for everyone.
Right.
But the mindset helps.
So I think it's like staying in that coach-like space, right? You don't have to coach all the time, but it's like that space where you are coach-like, and yeah.
And therefore, coaching is like what you call, HR becomes a space provider.
You both use those words, right? And they came from facilitator, or in a way, your partner. I think those are the words which kind of exemplify that. And I can say, both of you, the way you've been listening to each other and picking up those words, you're not noting down anything. I can't see, and that kind of listening, right? It's become embedded in both of you. So it's like a wonderful demonstration of all of that.
But one question back to you, Mani.
Sure.
On this aspect of coaching, what is it? One day somebody jumped into me and then said, "Boss, it's crisis. Don't ask me questions back." So, I got a little stumbled by that. I mean, I sort of later was reflecting. Am I overusing it? Am I balancing it? Am I being cruel to others? Because not that everybody would like that, but over a period of time, people come with solutions. Even in that crisis, I sort of believed that that person actually jumped up to me to say, "I brought 3 solutions."
Yeah.
But how did that happen? When I think, I feel good, because many a times, if you didn't ask, they may not even come with solutions.
True.
So crisis also, it helps, but if you can make the individual, that was my reflection, Mani. I am asking you this.
It's very similar to the culture part which you both spoke about, right? It doesn't happen overnight, but it's like you are constantly in that frame of mind. And I take objection to that word cruel, by the way. We'll talk about it separately. But But I think it's very similar. When you get into that frame of mind where you are, kind of making people think and reflect, initially there will be resistance because they're not used to it. Gradually they start thinking, and initially they think in front of you. Later they think before they come to you. So that there is further thinking built on that. So I think that's the process which works, right? So this person who came to you with crisis had already thought, and then he came to you about something. Right? In earlier case, probably someone would have come and said, "There is crisis. What do I do?" So that's a shift from that space. So I think that's what happens in coaching. It's a very gradual process. It seeps into you, and slowly you start being reflective. You think, and you listen better. Your relationships become better. You connect better. That's what the theme we have been talking about: connecting and having more conversations, better conversations. So that's what I feel.
Thank you for that, Mani.
Yeah.
Well said, Mani. Good one. Yeah.
It's been amazing talking to both of you, and I still feel we have just scratched the surface, So, but thank you so much, both of you, for taking out the time today and coming together and giving your insights. It was lovely having you both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mani. Thank you so much, Swaraj.